Welcome to the show. I am John Layfield, and this show is entirely about people changing the world. This show was made for people like Mark Crandall. 1994, Mark Crandall starts up Hoops4Hope Africa. Fast forward 25 years, 10,000 kids impacted annually in that program in Zimbabwe and South Africa. The 2008 Boston Celtics, when they won the championship, latched on to Ubuntu, a phrase that came out of Africa and was popularized by this program with Coach Ngoni, Coach Kita, and Mark Crandall. The phrase Ubuntu is now on the Boston Celtics championship ring from that year. And the documentary Ubuntu Matters was about this man, Mark Crandall, and his wonderful program. Mark, it's an honor to have you on the show. You can break generational cycles. You are doing it. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, John, for having me and for creating this platform to talk about good things going on in the world.
You know, in 1984, I guess you were a Rotary student and exchange student, which is a terrific program. And you end up in Zimbabwe, but that was not one of your top three choices, right? You just kind of end up there by happenstance, correct?
Yeah, I guess I liken it a little bit to a little fate and destiny. Yeah, I signed up to be a Rotary Scholar exchange student when I was 15 years old, from a little town here on Eastern Long Island. And I knew there was a big world out there. Hadn't traveled before. I was an only child, so it took a little bit of convincing of my parents to even be an advocate to let me go, and created the relationship with the Rotary. They guaranteed me one of my top choices. So I put France, Brazil, and Japan, and I got a letter that said I'd be going with the first group of exchange students to a new country called Zimbabwe in Southern Africa. So it really, getting on a plane by myself at 15 years of age, having to go to a whole new school, put on a uniform with leather shoes and socks and gaiters and a tie, was very new for me, but really helped change the direction of my life.
Yeah, Zimbabwe had just become the country of Zimbabwe from Rhodesia after they changed over after the long civil war that ended in 1980. When you got there, what was the inspiration for you? You played basketball, you liked basketball, but what was the inspiration that set for the seed in your mind that you would come back a decade later and start up Hoops4Hope?
So I guess, just being a kid in out of my comfort zone in a new school, I gravitated to my comfort zone, which was the basketball court. I grew up in a town where I played all different sports and considered myself an athlete, and I'm a little bit of a victim of gravity, skinny kid, but that wisdom of, playing this American sport really helped me in a school where, I was really the only white kid playing basketball on the team and really in the entire league. So it was a little bit of a different place for me, coming I'm from here in East Hampton in Long Island. So that was my first awareness of the world and how basketball really helped me feel part of the team and part of a school and doing my best to just fit in a place that I was so far away. And it was a really exciting time to be in Zimbabwe. After this long civil war, they hadn't had many visitors. And being part of the Rotary, I was invited out to lots of different businesses and farms and different travels. So it was an amazing year for me. But, I think it all comes back a little bit prior. I'd like to just share, in my small town, the sports that I played, whether it was Little League or Biddy basketball, it was all driven by volunteers. It was the dads and moms who, after their day job, they'd be the Little League coach, sponsored by the fire department, would supply the equipment. And, here you pretty much just have to make the team. If we won a game, we got free pizza down at the pizza place. And that was definitely a motivator.
If you lost, did you not eat?
Well, we didn't lose. We were pretty good here. But, so once in a while, yeah, I think they still treated us maybe to the ice cream as well. But but it's a community where, if your house is on fire, it's a volunteer fire department. If you have a medical issue, it's a volunteer ambulance corps. So it's really been ingrained. My parents, my mom was a social worker, my dad was a teacher, and so And my dad was part of that fire department. So as a kid, I was, if I was in the truck with him and there was a fire in the town, we went to that fire. And so I guess the kind of empathy and giving back and volunteerism within a community was really ingrained in me. And being there in Zimbabwe that year, my sneakers were the most popular sneakers around. Every kid wanted that pair of sneakers. So I left with a very unique perspective. What came back to the U.S., finished out my senior year, and then went on to University of Vermont, where I thought I was going to do business. I was also a very entrepreneurial kid. I had my business card by the time I was 9. My childhood friend, I'm actually still in business with now. But we did everything from pulling weeds to washing cars, mowing lawns. We used to catch fish and sell them to neighbors. So I knew the value of a dollar. Also did all those hard jobs, washing the dishes, mowing the lawns, cutting hedges. And so that kind of entrepreneurial spirit blended over. I thought I wanted to go to business school, but it was really sociology that caught my attention and my passion of realizing that I maybe could use business not so much to always make money, but maybe to help create some change in the world by using the power of being here in an advantaged place here in the Hamptons, and helping do something that was maybe a little bit bigger than myself.
Nowadays it's known that they have great basketball players in Africa. I guess Hakeem Olajuwon, one of the first of all time, Dikembe Mutombo, incredibly philanthropic human being, wonderful human being. And now you have Joel Embiid, Giannis, 14 different players started the NBA rosters from the continent of Africa. And now you have the basketball league that's going to start up in Kigali, Rwanda, in a bubble in May of 2021 of this year. But back then, 1984, how was basketball in the continent of Africa and Zimbabwe as a sport?
Well, in Zimbabwe, it was definitely a new sport, but it was very popular. And I didn't get to travel to some of the other countries, which are a little bit more well-known for basketball, whether it's in the region. I think traditionally Mozambique, Angola, they have a very long history of basketball. And then I think things were also happening up north. But I did, when I went to school, I was one of the better players. And then I came back as soon as I graduated college. About 10 minutes later, I flew back to Africa to see all my friends and host families, and spend a couple of months just to see it from a new eyes, and return to Africa. And I went back to my school and started playing, and that's really where it ticked, where some of these kids were playing basketball a lot better. And that was now 6 years later, 5 years later. And kids were getting scholarships to American schools, and the growth of the game was extremely obvious. And so I returned back to America, and a couple of years later, I started a summer camp for kids. I was 22 years old, restarted the summer camp that I had gone to as a kid, with my same childhood business partner. We were young. We started with 10 kids, and it turned into 20, it turned into 30. And this is actually our 30th year of summer camp. We're still in business. And so I had a small business going a few months of the year. So I thought, hey, why don't I start a summer camp in Zimbabwe? And I had a high school friend in Zimbabwe that was also great with kids. So we got a space, and we started our camp. But right before I left, that was 1994, there was an article in the New York Times entitled "Where Kids Don't Jump." And it was about the NBA players, Dikembe and Patrick Ewing and another big player were coming over for the first official tour. Now South Africa was now a free country with Nelson Mandela, and they were making an official visit with the NBA to South Africa, where they had a professional league, but it was an all-white league prior to that. And they obviously saw the development of the game in Africa, and definitely a light bulb came on in my head. And so during that year, I just started donating my time and experience in basketball. I called the federations there and said, hey, I'm a guy, I'm willing to coach. And that's where I eventually met our directors, Ngoni Mukakula and Terry Kita Mantagulu. in Zimbabwe and South Africa, because they were the guys doing it on the ground there.
What was that like in Africa, the continent at that time? April 27th, 1994, that was the first free election, Freedom Day. We just celebrated it from all those from South Africa and people around the world. That you had the first free elections in South Africa. You were there for that. What was that like on the continent of Africa? Did you feel it up in Zimbabwe like people were feeling it just south in South Africa?
Yeah, it was a very exciting time. I mean, Mandela really to have that kind of mediation, reconciliation, and his presence just made it feel that anything was possible. And that was the exact time when I was there coaching. I called a coach and said, "Hey, I'm here to help." She said, "Oh, you're the new coach." And I ended up in a gang infested community where these kids couldn't look you in the eyes. They were inches away from being in gangs, but here basketball was a way for them to escape. I had their parents coming to me saying, "Thank you so much for your time." So I knew there was something bigger going on. But it was an amazing time to be in the continent, and that feeling of that change was happening for the better.
Coach Ngani, he's my buddy. We went to Dumbleshova Cave, Dumbleshava Cave. I hope I'm saying it right. Based on your recommendation, I went down to Zimbabwe just because I'd seen Ubuntu Matters and I'd heard so much about you. I wanted to see a program. It lived up to all the hype. It was one of the best trips I've ever made right before COVID. Unfortunately, COVID has kind of changed the world. What was that like for you during that time logistically? How did you decide with Ngoni and Coach Kita from South Africa to decide we're going to do this now? Guys like you, which is what I admire so much, you jump both feet in the deep end. And when you did this, what was that moment when you're standing by the pool about to jump, you decide, okay, let's pull the trigger on this? And how did it happen with Ngoni and Coach Kita?
So I met Ngoni's from Zimbabwe, like you said. And I'd reached out. He was working for a group called Sport for All. He said, "Come along, we're training 40 or 50 teachers that had never touched a basketball before. I could really use your help." So we show up for this 3-day clinic and just teaching the basics of the game to teachers who saw the power of sport and wanted to share it. And at the same time, I was also down in Cape Town, similar scenario. Terry Kita was coming off of his professional career, and he was also doing coaching in places. And we were invited by an ex-gang leader who had also never played basketball, covered in tattoos, just out of prison, but really saw the power of sport to influence the young men and girls in his community to not follow his path. So he invited us there. And at the same time, I was meeting a lot of kids, coaching these teams, but they would be asking me for the basics. They didn't have balls. They didn't have a court. They didn't have shoes. They didn't have uniforms. So the basics that we sometimes take for granted here of what it takes to even play a sport is really what they wanted. And, me being American, having kind of one foot here, running my summer camp and bringing these stories back about how sport really could change these young people's lives, people were very supportive. So it was obvious that I needed to start a nonprofit, which I did in 1994 with several people here in East Hampton. And out came the uniforms and the sneakers and the balls. And so the first few years was really almost like research. It was seeing how we could positively affect these teams with the things that they really needed. I didn't have money. I was young, but I did have access to large hockey bags. I was the guy coming with the biggest bags you've ever seen to the airport, begging the people there, "These are for the kids of Africa. I'm not getting paid." So it was really an upcycling effort at the beginning to see the power of sport. We were kind of pioneers in that time of trying to convince people that you can use sport to do other things. And we realized quickly it wasn't just about the sport and the opportunity to play, but also how you use that time responsibly. It was also a time when the HIV epidemic was beginning there in Africa, as well as other social issues that we addressed while we had these kids.
The seven tools are a foundation for your group, Hoops4Hope Africa. But when did you develop that? When did you start realizing that we need to develop a set curriculum to go with the basketball? And what were your goals initially? Was it just we're going to get a lot of kids playing basketball, we're going to have a positive impact on their lives through mentorship and coaching? When did it change to, okay, we're going to actually have set curriculum, develop the seven tools, and develop something that will help these kids get something better in life and give them options?
So yeah, once we got out of the kind of beginning phase of just kind of using the sport and providing the equipment, you realize that the real missing piece there is the coach. You really need that person there who is that mentor. And it's often difficult, volunteerism, in a place where people don't have jobs. You know, it's a bit of a luxury to be able to have a job and then drive your car there and volunteer. So that's when we started to create, I was fundraising here in America, trying to be able to pay a small salary or just a stipend to some of these mentor coaches. But we also realized that we needed a model that was able to measure impact and was a little bit more scientific, and a curriculum, like you say. So we turned to two different areas. One was, it was a Harvard professor who was working in Cape Town with the Department of Education there, Dr. Charles Deutsch, and he had come up with a peer education model that we adapted. It was called Root and Ang at the time, but it was a very simple idea that if you have a really strong mentor within a community who is trained and is using that time, no matter what the sport or activity, and you have repetitive contact with children, and you have their attention, you can deliver something that is very powerful, whether it's around health needs or staying in school, whatever it might be. And then likewise, we needed a curriculum. So we used this peer education model, and then we turned to an existing group that was out of New York City called the Community of Unity. And they had these seven tools. It's not rocket science. It's empathy, which is Ubuntu that you're talking about. We changed it. We spent a year with Ngoni and Kita Africanizing the model and these seven tools, kind of combining the Harvard peer education model with these seven tools. But it's self-esteem, it's self-awareness, responsibility, focus, empathy, and sense of humor. And did I maybe miss one? But I'll come back to that one. But but really, we use those as tools, kind of explaining it to our coaches that, you know, like somebody who goes and builds a house, you need to have these tools on your tool belt at all times to help you ultimately make good decisions in the face of the challenges that these kids face every single day.
How many days a week do you think it is, from your experience, that you need to be in front of kids to make an impact?
Well, our programs at the least are 3 days a week, but in many of these communities, there's not a lot going on. There is not sports happening very much with from the schools. We're working in highly disadvantaged communities. So a lot of our programs are between 5 and 7 days, because we've also created a community through this, just by going there for the last 20 plus years and having kids who are positively affected by their mentors. They want to be the next, we call them MVPs and all-stars. So the main volunteers who keep coming back, who might be young school graduates or even high school students, those are the MVPs, the most valuable people in our program. And the real community coordinators are called all-stars. They organize not only the sport and training and mentoring the MVPs, and creating the relationships with the spaces, which are either community centers or partnerships with the schools. They will oversee an entire community. So that really is the model, having great people, which there are amazing young people in Zimbabwe and South Africa, and having them come back, keep coming back, so that day after day, you can create that trust and that relationship with a young person so that they can make the best decision in their life.
I
And
love this model because it's sustainable, as long as you have funding, of course, which is the hardest thing in any charity that is started up or any charity that's running. But you have your all stars, which you train, which I understand that's who you pay, and that is who works for Hoops for Hope Africa. And then you have what I saw, at least one of your models was you have 10 MVPs under that will be your community volunteers that support up to, say, 10 different teams. And so that's the hierarchy of you training the trainers who then oversee these 10 teams. Is that the model that you have?
exactly.
Did I get that right?
Exactly. And we use the power of the circle to do a lot of our delivery. We don't often have access to classrooms or big spaces. So we do a lot within our circle time, we call it. And there you can, either follow the curriculum. Each community has different challenges. So, and especially as that challenge might happen today's the day we need to speak about this. So you've already got the trust, you've got the ears and eyes of these kids, and our coaches are more facilitators. They're not experts, they're not social workers. So they know that if they're able to identify a bigger problem, they do have that relationship with the school or the local social worker to try to pass it off and try to get help to a kid or a family. In this year of COVID, we haven't been able to play sports, but now we're using that circle time to help these kids be prepared for a year lost of school. We're doing reading, we're doing arts and crafts, we're playing traditional games within that circle, and having kids teach other kids, which is really our model, as each one teaches many. And like you say, it is a very sustainable, low-cost model.
How is COVID right now in Zimbabwe? I know in Malawi, which I keep up with because of Babesi Pride, which I've been down there to help support with Richard Bennett and my good friend Gareth Noakes, who's running that down there. COVID was really bad a couple months ago. It's kind of waned, either through herd immunity or whatever, because they don't have a lot of vaccines. I saw recently only 75 or 76,000 people out of 18 million in Zimbabwe had been vaccinated. How is COVID right now in Zimbabwe? And how is that going to, you're going to have schools go back in session in the fall, you believe?
Well, they just came back into session, although the schools traditionally are pretty crowded. So they're trying to do all the basics of good COVID protocol in keeping the numbers down. So they're on a different day schedule. They're slowly coming back. Luckily, it's not a super crowded country. The population is a little bit low, and they've also adhered to very strict policies. They had lockdown from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. for most of this year, and now they're let you stay out until 10 p.m. and you can come out at 6 a.m. But they are really, through the police, not letting big gatherings happening. There's no nightclubs, there's no bars, there hasn't been sports. So they've really done their part. And also to keep masks on. You must wear masks outside. And so as much as I think people realize that the medical system is not great there. So they know that you don't want to end up being sick. And they also support each other. And so we've been helping just keep in contact with our entire community through simple means. We call our virtual community. Our participants don't have computers, but they all have cell phones. So this year we've had a very active WhatsApp community. Each one of our 7 communities in Zimbabwe, with over 250 families, is receiving a lot of information from us, fun games, some COVID information, but they also don't have TV and satellites. So we're trying to keep the hope alive through just communication and the relationships that we do have. And now we're back on the sides of the courts, not playing sports, but doing reading and arts and crafts and things like that, just to help the social emotional levels of these children.
One thing I saw that you guys, and I told several different charities about it, was your WhatsApp messaging that you guys have. It's so good. I was in there with Ngoni at, I guess, the main headquarters or whatever you want to call it there in Zimbabwe. And he was getting WhatsApps from all of his different coaches from all the different teams. So the coaches would just take a picture of the team that day and send it. And I thought that's such a great way to stay in contact with donors, with supervisors. And it's very easy because you don't have to put a message to it. It's just take a picture, put it on WhatsApp and send it in. And you see all these different teams around hurrah at the time, working in conjunction, and it's a real easy way to keep up with it. I always thought that was a terrific idea that you guys have.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you work in the developing world, you really have to have very simple solutions to some of these complex problems. So that's where you see what works. And, often the electricity doesn't work, or there's no Wi-Fi. So, but cell phones do work. Everyone's got a cell phone. And when it comes to measuring our impact, we want to know that those kids are there, that coach is there, and that our programs are happening. So at the very least, through those WhatsApp communications, we can see by a day-to-day basis, this is the impact, as well as, like you say, for you being here on the other side of the world and wanting to be involved and play your part. You really like to see that kid that's out there having fun, that's maybe wearing the jersey from your school here in America that you wore for a few years and then donated it to Hoops for Hope. And now it's going to last, another 10, 20, 30 years on the kids of our players there, which goes to also, we haven't talked about sports. No one wants to play sports and then not play another team. So a lot of what our coordinators do is organizing leagues, and within we usually use a 5-kilometer radius, and we work with a lot of schools. And so, pre-COVID, we'd be playing a lot of games. And then if you're the top 2 teams, both boys and girls, we have very equal programs of girls and boys. Those top teams would get invited to our best of the best tournament. And in pre-COVID times, we would have up to about 900 kids that we bus in, that are getting lunch for a 2-day tournament at the nice school in the middle of the city. And again, some of these kids don't get a chance to get out of their community so often. So really touching on a lot of different things that are able to impact these kids, because they love sport, they love the game, they want to play. And so we got to be able to provide that opportunity. But it's not so easy to get basketballs in Zimbabwe.
Right. John Wooden, the great coach of UCLA, he was famously would take the first day of practice and tell people how to put their socks on and shoes on so they wouldn't get blisters. And I'm not making fun of the American players. I'm an American player, are today's players. But when I went down there, you had these hard concrete built asphalt type courts. A lot of your kids were barefoot. I mean, forget about blisters and socks and shoes. It's an amazing thing to see kids play with smiles on their face, barefoot on a concrete court.
The power of the sneaker has really been, one of the things I think a lot of Americans connect to. We've brought over 6 container loads full of sneakers. It's very easy to get a used pair of sneaker from that American kid. It's a lot more difficult to fill that container. We bring the most essential items, which are, it's gone past me bringing just bag loads. We have so many kids in the program that we would love to create that Cinderella story and get a pair of sneakers on every kid. But it's quite cost prohibitive to get it across the planet. But it is one of the most amazing things when you can share a pair of sneakers with that child. I know whenever I got a new pair of sneakers as a kid, I would literally wear them to bed and, wake up in the morning. I thought I could run faster and jump higher. And, it was, American kid, I love my pair of sneakers, but can you only imagine if you've never even owned a pair of sneakers? And that's where you see a lot of true Ubuntu. I got 2 stories to share where, sometimes, these kids, they live Ubuntu. They live this, that it's really teamwork within a community. It's that we're all in this together. And, if we're best friends, John, how can I get the pair of shoes and you don't? And you'll often see in those games where I'm wearing the left one and my buddy John here is wearing the right one. And that will really blow your mind when you see that happening. I recently, on my last trip down there, I brought some sneakers that were donated from a program we do a lot with kids here in America to open their eyes to the power of the sneaker and to also share with them the magic of our programs. And so we asked them to bring some sneakers. They wrote special notes inside of them for the new owner. I was able to actually just bring them in my luggage over there. I presented it to this kid, and he already he actually already had a pair of sneakers, and he went across the circle and re-gifted it to another kid. And the power of giving and sharing is at a next level, especially when your life depends on it. And I think we all this year have really come to see how we are all in this together. And sometimes that the ancient ways of doing things in countries, we maybe need to turn to some of these simple things that are going to help us all thrive and survive.
You take so many things for granted. You had a woman coach there in Zimbabwe, and I took her down a book from one of your friends of Michelle Obama. And you take it for granted. We can order stuff on Amazon. You can't there. And she was so appreciative to get this book. It's just it was a treasure, which books are treasures, but it's so cool to be able to see that. I saw a great clip that you had of, I think it's 1997, and I think it was Mabuku. I hope I say all these names right.
Mabuku, yeah.
Where you got your first kit given to the kids. You got the first jerseys and stuff, and you saw the impact that kids had of the pride of wearing the jersey. Tell me about that moment. That was kind of a light bulb aha moment for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's the power of a team. I mean, that's what separates you from those who aren't playing. Being able to put on that uniform to go represent your community. And even though it might have the name of Bulldogs from some other mascot on the other side of the planet, that kind of joke that polyester has got a half-life of about 200 years. But here, school districts, we have the money, we're able to get new uniforms after a few years. So it has been one of the most powerful tools to bring that team together, to show them that you're working hard, that you're going to get this uniform. And those kids don't take those uniforms home. That is the job of the MVP or the all-star, to make sure that they come back with the coach, they get washed, they get distributed, and they're often shared by multiple teams over the course of a day, because we don't get that many that get over there. So it really is, both that power of the sneaker, that power of the uniform, that really bring that team together and showcase what sport is all about. And I'll even enlighten you to we've had some upcycled uniforms from some of these schools. We have some real great benefactors up in Canada, and they've been forced through politics of late to change their mascots' names, because they're not representative and they're not PC for First Nations. So here we have basically racist uniforms of Canada being used in South Africa, where they don't know and they don't really care. They're just excited to have some uniforms. And
that's great.
The irony of the world right now.
That's wonderful. In 2008, you guys had a big cholera outbreak, and you guys created songs. When I was down there, one thing you guys do, the power of the circle. It was teaching kids how to make candles for homes that don't have electricity, or electricity goes out. Cheap way to make it. You were teaching kids how to make floor wax, because the mothers wax the floors almost daily, and a cheap way to do that so they can benefit their family. But you created 3 songs about the cholera outbreak. And out of your 7,500 kids, not one kid got it. And that has been one of the biggest parts of your charities, both HIV and AIDS awareness, and then later other diseases that have come along, right?
Yeah, we do very innovative education. We use what is very natural to a lot of these African kids, which is movement, dancing, and music. And our life skills team there helps to create new songs and little activities that help kids to, I don't think any kid is going to listen to fear-based lecturing. We get kids up and moving, singing and dancing, and using examples. When it comes to HIV, they're dribbling around chairs that will mimic the virus, because ultimately we want these kids to be able to identify. That's the self-awareness, knowing the challenges within your own community, whether it's the gang that's over there or the shebeen that's on that side, of how to get home safely. Cholera, knowing that you have to wash your hands and stay safe. And for 25 years we've been doing disease awareness, and so when COVID hit, this became very natural for us to be able to just, it's an extension, it's just the next challenge for these children and our team to be able to help educate through very creative, interactive ways to help kids think and make the right decision in the face of these things.
2005, the United Nations recognized sports. They were a little behind. Nelson Mandela did it about 10 or 11 years before, but they did come along with 17 social development goals. You guys hit a lot of those goals. 2007, you guys get your first grant from the United Nations. It's more of a, I don't know, a theoretical question, but being down in Africa, there's some incredible work being done by Bloomberg Philanthropies, by Bill Gates, by the United Nations. Some wonderful, wonderful work, but you don't see it getting to a lot of the communities for a lot of reasons. Why is it that more groups, these big groups that are spending big money, are not using groups like yours as a facilitator, as a delivery mechanism to deliver programs that could be done directly to the 10,000 kids plus that you have?
I think it comes to just some of the challenges of, why do we even need nonprofits that are doing this important work on the ground? There's a lot of gaps in society that need to be addressed. And, we're so focused on trying to help these kids on a day-to-day basis, and we're doing it on a major shoestring to be able to do it. And in order to, I believe, get the attention and that funding takes a lot of big brain power and a lot of guys in suits that we don't necessarily have to be able to negotiate and be in the right circles to be able to even get access to that kind of funding. So, we've been in the game a long time and we are doing amazing work, but we're still super underfunded. We do a lot at especially our top level with volunteers. So we're not at those conferences and, rubbing shoulders with the people that maybe are making those decisions. Obviously we do grant writing and we do parties and we do everything we can to raise the money, which is often a lot more difficult in ways of than even doing these programs on the ground. So there's just a gap of being able to get access to that money. And people often think that we're kind of the UNICEF of sport and development because, we have a great website. We're showing the programs, we're showing the power of what we're doing. And I mean, our email just fills with amazing groups that are small, that mentor who's sitting in that community in Malawi saying, I've got these 25 kids. They understand why they're there. They have the empathy. They've got it all, but that guy doesn't have a job. He doesn't have basketballs. He doesn't have the uniforms, all the basic tools that we also struggle to get. There's a lot of people out there that just don't have access. So they're looking for partnership. What does that mean? That means they need funding or equipment to do more training, to actually do the things that they're doing.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, it's getting, once people get into a program, they stay with it. It's just hard to get that in front of the right people. When I was in Malawi, I would see these conferences at the Latitude Hotel there, which is one of the nicest hotels in Malawi. But then I would go out in the rural areas and you wouldn't see these people at all. I just don't think they understand how to deliver some of these programs where it needs to be delivered. That's why your program as a delivery mechanism could be something that is key to these wonderful programs who are giving billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars. 2007, you got the grant from the United Nations. Is that an ongoing grant, or was that a one-time event to combat crime and drugs? How did that grant work?
That was a small grant. That was more around a 1-year type of delivery. After that, 2010 with World Cup, we had another big grant from GIZ, which is kind of the USA of Germany. And that was really geared towards supporting our programs in South Africa, which was also great. We had Angela Merkel visit our fields. But again, it was time-based. It was around World Cup. There was a lot happening. That was not an ongoing grant. So we were able to deliver and share our model with about 50 different groups and led that grant in around the Cape Town, Western Cape area. But those grants are hard to manage. There's not, took a lot to be able to manage it as a small nonprofit and deliver, and we executed it, and it's great on our resume, but it didn't leave any other funding to help build the organization. So whenever you get a grant, it's often difficult when it runs out, and then you have to be looking for the next way to create your sustainability, because ultimately these kids are depending on us. And there's been many months over the 25 years where we've got staff who depends on us. We've got programs, we've got kids, and when you're month to month and that fragile, it's very stressful.
When you get emails from people that are starting up charities or wanting to implement your curriculum into it, do you have a set curriculum that you actually just PDF file that you send to them, or do you just answer everything kind of ad hoc and explain to them kind of a tailored way in what they might need?
Often, I do a little bit of both. One is trying to advise. We get a lot of people asking us, how to start a nonprofit, or if it's from that coach that's in a place that really needs resources and support. We're not able to help them financially, but we are very willing to share our model and our curriculum with people that ask. That often comes with a lot of questions. It comes with a lot of follow-up, and ultimately we'd like to be in the place where if we do share a curriculum, that we're able to also challenge that person to measure the impact that they're having, so that we can have more of a collective impact, which is really what we all need to strive for, because we seem to be reinventing the ball all over the place, but we just need to really all work together. And that's what is great in the nonprofit space, is that people are very willing to share, especially those who have gotten bigger more quickly. We've used a lot of grassroots soccer. Was a group out of South Africa that started around the same time. They had the advantage of having their founder was on Survivor. He was one of the first winners of Survivor, and he got his $1 million prize and was able to use his celebrity in a way to get to the USAID money. And as much as they didn't have programs on the ground at the time, they got the Mercedes-Benz grant, and they passed a brand new bus to us that we were able to use for a few years. So it's really being able to pass that ladder down and realizing that we all do need to work together and share things, so we don't have to reinvent that ball.
And the grassroots soccer, that's what you ended up starting around the 2010 World Cup, football soccer World Cup there in Cape Town with Soccer for Hope as well. That's still running, right? And it's all for girls, correct?
Yeah, we identified at that time, basketball was such a niche sport. It's not the traditional sports that, in South Africa, you got rugby, you got cricket. Obviously, football is huge in Africa. So whenever we were wanting to start a basketball program, there was never any questions asked. Sure, come to our school. When we started Soccer for Hope, it seemed like, sport can be kind of competitive. And out came the cats who were like, how dare you do a tournament in this neighborhood? So we realized, as much as we were doing boys and girls basketball, nobody was doing girls and soccer. So it helped to elevate our girls empowerment and really be in a niche space where we weren't stepping on anyone's toes. We also at that time started Chess for Hope, using the game of chess to also bring kids together. It's a very easy game to do in a classroom, and we had some programs, both Soccer for Hope and Chess for Hope, doing on a more limited basis now. We're focusing more on the basketball for both boys and girls.
How are you working with the NBA? This incredible documentary, or whatever you want to call it. I watched it again last night, the Ubuntu Matters. Just a terrific documentary. Keita and Ngola Mukakula, I hope I say my friend's name right. They come across so well. They have such passion, as do you, talking about the program and the grassroots in Africa. How are you working with the NBA? I know they're starting up the league next month in Kigali, Rwanda, as in a bubble in the new stadium there. How are you working with the NBA, and how are they perceiving your grassroots movement still?
So we've had a great relationship with the NBA. I'm here in New York, so actually that introduction was made by Ethan Zahn from Grassroots Soccer, about 14 years ago. And they've been doing these camps across the world. They call it Basketball Without Borders. So they come in for a week to South Africa. They take the top 100 players of Africa and bring them to one space. They have a lot of scouts there. They have coaches there, and both training and identifying great athletes on the continent. And through our relationship, they saw that we were the experts in life skills. We'll leave the basketball to them at that moment. But our guys, through that you witnessed, do very cool stuff through song and dance, delivering both HIV education, gender equality. So they brought us in to do those two things originally. So we would go send our strike team into that camp, for our coaches who are normally in their township high density communities, working with kids every day, to go to the platform of being in the NBA and meeting these NBA players and getting the swag and being on the center court, doing their thing, and having Dikembe Mutombo joining in these team building games was pretty amazing. And so we were invited to 13 or 14 of those camps. A few years ago, the NBA also brought a real NBA game to Africa. They've done 2 of them, which we were able to bring kids. We took a couple busloads of kids from Zimbabwe, brought them to Johannesburg for the first ever game in Africa, which you do see in that Hoops Africa movie. And as of late, Junior NBA and NBA Africa has been making its way around the continent, where they want to identify coaches to do a small junior NBA league, like they often do here in America with boys and girls clubs, where they split up the teams into their favorite NBA teams and they play competition, but they've left the life skills to us as the life skills experts. So last year, we were able to go in and train their junior NBA coaches, both in Rwanda and in Morocco. And so when it comes to any coach, what is first and foremost in our training is the protection of that child, how to be a great coach. I think, often here in America, we will empower lots of people to be those coaches, but do we ever ask them, those hard questions and really train them to be the best mentor that they can be? And that's really where our skills are, is taking somebody who is passionate about the game, but helping them to identify how important that job is, and how precious that child is, and how to do that. And especially in a place like Rwanda was absolutely amazing, because the coaches that we're working with there were the kids who survived the genocide. You were talking about 1994, when we're all celebrating in Africa. That was the same time that there was a million people killed within 100 days by their neighbors and their own country people. And those kids who survived and had very, very, very difficult upbringings, now 25 years later, are the teachers and the basketball coaches. So us to be able to activate them, to make them realize what child protection is all about, and that they can use song and dance. And it didn't take much convincing, and wow, it's really pretty powerful when you see these teachers and coaches realizing how they can affect the next generation.
South Africa has a lot of natural resources. I mean, they go through a lot of political turmoil, as a lot of countries in Africa have. Zimbabwe, the same. Used to be called the breadbasket of Africa. A lot of natural resources as well. Mugabe has been removed, but you still have about 80% unemployment in Zimbabwe. What do you think is, say, the future of Hoops for Hope Zimbabwe and the country itself, when you're facing so much unemployment? You're telling these kids, do the right thing, but then the jobs are tough to come by. Mm-hmm. So what is your pathway to these kids? What do you tell these kids, and what do you think the future of that region is?
Yeah, those are the economic challenges are major. And a lot of what you spoke about, the candle making, the making the floor wax, we do bring in into our teams the local people of how that's sustainability, is how do you actually put food on your table in life, and how do you raise a family. So we have a we brought in a lot of Americans over time, different university students, and one amazing young man who came over, was part of our programs, has since started his own, it's called Uncommon. He's doing STEM computer programs in all the same communities that we work in. So there are ways for Zimbabweans to be able to do their own education. I mean, all it takes is a computer now to do all kinds of different things. So I think we need to, not look at what we don't have, but look what we do have and how we can empower these kids in ways where they can, look towards making money. Often the sport has been a way. It's, we don't talk a lot about this, but a lot of our kids become coaches. And then now, because the sport is growing, the schools need coaches. Who do they turn to? They want a young coach that's been through the Hoops4Hope program. There's a great amateur basketball league there. All those adults, I stand there, I ask, which one of these kids are Hoops4Hope products? They're like, there's like 3 guys that we don't recognize. All those kids who are now adults have come through, and those teams, they're not professional players, but they're kind of sponsored by the insurance company, by this business. They get opportunities to work in those companies because of their skill at the game. We also do a lot of coaching around refereeing. That does actually pay. So you can see how sport and sport administration, working in schools, working in as teachers, we have often a lot of our MVP and all-star coaches use their experience with us. Both they get communication skills, they get computer skills, they learn to work with kids. They're primed to become an assistant teacher or find a track in the schools working. So we definitely see the power of what we're doing as the next step for business development. And it's where I see a passion for myself of trying to bring some innovative ideas that they haven't seen there to create new business that is sustainable, that is viable, that is reliable and realistic. And you go back to the BAL and Dikembe Mutombo. He is now championing green, sustainable mining, because we all know that the future is in batteries, and often those precious metals that go into the batteries are not they're not always mined in the most ethical ways. So he is using his power of the game to go and create a consortium of people. They're delivering both water in places with very innovative, cool water delivery systems and wells, as well as they just announced this week of this new consortium of business guys who are going to be fully about green, sustainable, ethical mining that is going to help people for the long term.
You spent the last 25 years, at least officially from the start of your charity, changing the world. For one, you should be very, very proud of yourself. I'm certainly proud of you, and anybody who knows you is as well. What would you tell a young Mark Crandall that was going to Zimbabwe, that the Mark Crandall of 2021 knows that the Mark Crandall of 1994 didn't know? What would you tell him?
So I meet a lot of young people that they like to fast track things. I think you really have to be patient. You have to do your research. You have to, I often advise, whatever you do, don't just go and start a nonprofit. There's a lot of nonprofits that need your help, and bring your expertise to a group that really can use you, as opposed to again reinventing the ball of trying to get a board of directors, raise the money. We maybe don't need yet another nonprofit if you can find somebody who's very much aligned with your mission and gain the experience to know where you fit in. Like I had mentioned, one of the hardest parts of doing good work in the world, especially for those who maybe can't pay for it and you want to help provide those services, is it's helpful if you are already a millionaire or a billionaire or have a foundation, because it is going to take a lot of money. It takes a lot of personal sacrifice to be able to do that work. And if you can't take care of yourself and your own family at the same time as giving to others, at first it seems quite easy. You have that energy, you think you know a few people that definitely are excited to help you, but is it sustainable over the long term to keep going back to those same people? So having a very strong network of supporters that will be by your side and keeping that communication open. But I think for all young people, I mean, it's an overnight success takes, at least 10 or 20 years. So putting in your time, keeping your ears open, listening, reading, and seeing the landscape is really important. And often just calling people back, making that email, communicating is super important, as well as just finishing the job and keep coming back. I know our board of director, who's now our new executive director, I've been able to kind of really take more of a founder role right now after 25 years of kind of holding the reins. It's important that you kind of reinvent yourself and have other people who are process oriented to be supporting you. But he always says that, the reason that we're still around is that I keep showing up. We've kept the hope alive. I go back, I spend 20 years spending 6 months here in Long Island, and then the other 6 months I'm in South Africa with the team, rolling up my sleeves, getting the job done, to help share my skill and wisdom, but then also being here doing the fundraising.
1994, when you started the charity, I don't know if you had goals as here's how many kids we want to impact or not, or what you saw yourself doing, say 25 years later, but now you're impacting over 10,000 kids annually. What happens the next 25 years? Do you have a set goal? Do you have a set place you want to be, say 10 years or 15 years or 20 years? What do you see Hoops for Hope in the next 25 years?
Yeah, we often think of it as like a recipe. What we've created in Zimbabwe and South Africa has taken 20 plus years to create the cyclical cycle of Ubuntu, of giving back. And that takes time. And so we want to be able to share that recipe with those other, change makers throughout the world, and be able to give them the tools so that they don't have to reinvent it. But we also, as an organization, need to be sustainable, because we're not there yet. I've been a volunteer CEO, and I have a volunteer development director. We've just now taken on an executive director here who helped us found the organization 25 years ago. He went on to a foundation and nonprofit career, and we're so lucky to have him back. But basically everyone in our organization is under the poverty line. And why does the nonprofit world, we're doing some of the most important work in the world, and you can't actually make a living and feed your family doing it. Our people don't have health insurance on the ground. We don't have death benefits. So for me, I want to make sure that the people who are doing the great work are valued, have a meal on their table for their kids and their family. And I'm quite proud that we've been able to keep our staff. They've always gotten their salary. It might be a little late, and we might have stressed over here to be able to make that happen. But the people who are making significant change within their communities do feel stable, and they feel valued. But we can do a lot more to make sure that happens, and that we have a bit of a cushion, and to be able to just excite other people who can help make that change. We can't survive on just angel investors. We need more of them, people to commit and give back in a sustainable way. And we'll push the NBA. They've only now just started a foundation this year. And we're also trying to create some relationships with some young NBA players who have a lot of pressure and a lot of things going on, but we've got a couple that we think that really could be the face of our organization, because we've never yet had a donation from an NBA player, believe it or not.
You never had, but you had something from the NFL, from the NBA Players Association, right? But not directly from NBA players who want to put their face on it and things like that, right?
Yeah, the Players Association has a great foundation, and they support the life skills of the NBA players. So it's been a great relationship to, both with the NBA and the NBPA to see how we maximize, both the power of giving and giving back, and showcasing the great work that we're doing. So we're at that time where we've got a couple of guys who.
All we need is to get some of these NBA players down there to Zimbabwe. If they ever come down there, they'll give forever, because they'll see what a great program it is. Sometimes it's just awareness. These guys, as you say, they're pulled in a million different ways, but I think they should be giving. This is the future of of our world, that what you're doing in Africa, it's Ubuntu. It affects the rest of the world, as we've seen so much with a pandemic and with so many things that happen. You know, you've got to, the future is the kids, and that's what you're dealing with. How does the people out here that are listening to this, how do they support you? Either by giving kit, by giving money. What's the best way to support you?
Just go to the website. It's Hoops4Hope with the number 4.org. And we got lots of ways. We want you to become an Ubuntu sustainer. So, you know, sometimes we often give and then we you know, don't think about it. By being a sustainer means that you're kind of part of the team. Even if you give us one high five every month, $5, the price of a cup of, you know, fancy coffee or your Spotify subscription, to be part of the team, so that we know that at the end of the month, you know, we've got 100 sustainers who are helping keep our team of all-stars and MVPs on the courts for the kids, will make a huge difference. So if they can go to hoops4hope.org, we have a great Instagram page, so you can keep, you know, on abreast of all the magic that's happening with our kids and coaches down there at Hoops4Hope Global, and really just reaching out and staying part of the action and watching the movie too. You know, it was on South African Airways and Emirates Airways for a little while, and now it's on all those major channels if you want to watch the Hoops Africa movie that tells the bigger story.
And if people have old sneakers, old uniforms, how do they get those to kids in Zimbabwe and South Africa?
Often that's people's like quick solution. So just get in contact with us first. You know, often people get inspired. They're like, oh, we just raised you 1,000 pairs of sneakers. We're in Kansas. Where's your nearest drop-off point? Not so easy. We're based out here in Long Island. We are filling a container now. As you may know, shipping across the planet's gotten a lot more expensive. So, and each one of our 6 shipments that we've sent over there has gotten more difficult each time. You know, you live and you learn, but it's not easy to get donated sneakers in for free, and there's a huge cost. So we'd like for anyone who's giving to realize that, you know, it costs at least $5 to get that pair of sneakers over. So if you're going to donate a pair, you know, it's got to be worthy. It's got to be, you know, still have some good miles or kilometers left on it for the kid over there, and then be part of helping us get it across the planet to that kid, and realize that that's just the cherry on top. They're going to continue to play with their bare feet, but what we really need is to make sure that we've got the resources to have that coach there and the balls bouncing and all the other things that we're providing for these kids.
Mark, it's been a great honor to have you on. It's a great honor to see you. I think it's the first time we've seen each other in person, right? Or we haven't been on Zoom. We've talked many times on the phone, but I don't think we've ever.
We haven't met in person, but that's going to happen soon. And thank you, John, for what you're doing to expose the great work we're doing, and more so, you've come to Zimbabwe, you've felt it, you've really been there, and you're devoting to your programs, you know, around the world, Malawi, Memphis. You also are a person that is changing the world. So I applaud you and our friendship, and look forward to actually meeting in person soon.
Look forward to seeing you in Emagazet, and more importantly, down in Zimbabwe. Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.